Hey guys, what's up? Primal here, and welcome to my 700 subscriber special. First of all, I just want to say thank you all so very much for getting me this far within such a short amount of time. Well, it hasn't been that short. I mean, it's been a slow and steady race, to be honest, but the fact that I've been able to get like another 100 within only a matter of months is just impressive, if you ask me. Even when I'm not really posting as much. I mean, ever since I hit 800, yeah, I've just been getting more and more, and I'm almost to 900 just within a matter of like 3 to 4 months because of you guys. And even though I haven't really been posting as much this year because I've just been trying to get my life in gear, I just graduated college and I'm just working, but I'll still be here for you guys as much as I can for as long as you want me to be. So, yeah, it took me a little bit to think on what you guys would want for a sub special. I was thinking of doing another top 10 list, like top 10 game soundtracks, but that proved to be a more daunting task than I had imagined it to be, and I didn't really want to sit down like for months on end trying to get something like that together, especially when I have to jostle a whole bunch of other stuff like taking care of my stepdad, working, taking care of this place, and my mom, and trying to get out on my own. So, yeah. Then I remembered I saw a comment from one of my older videos. Like, I think it had to have been one of my Spider-Man videos. I don't really remember which one, but it was definitely one of my Spider-Man videos that someone wrote the comment. They said I should do like a list of what villains I'd like to see for the next Spider-Man game, which was announced. Well, it was finally revealed to us back in September, along with God of War Ragnarok. And it took me it took me a little bit to get something like that in gear. I don't really have any actual organization for this because I mean I've been working on another big project for you guys in regards to 800, and I will get that out after this. But for right now, yeah, I'm I'm giving y'all this one to the best of my abilities. I can really use any actual video because, well, I wasn't sure how far copyright would be pushed. That and the fact that I've had some interesting issues with the online video converters recently, ever since like the end of summer. So I haven't. It was a little bit difficult. So if I do use anything in this video, it'll be images. So let's get this show on the road finally. Let's start this little discussion on who I'd like to see in the next Spider-Man video game with a personal favorite villain of mine that I discovered when I was really young, when I had a little children's book on all the Spider-Man villains, and he came up right after Green Goblin, and it's no surprise that he would, given the fact that they're related in a sense. The villain I'm talking about is Hobgoblin, aka Roderick Kingsley, Jason McIndale, Ned Leeds, and I think, yeah, there was a fourth guy, but I forgot his name. He's not all that different from Green Goblin aside from his look and maybe a few different gadgets here and there, but given the fact that Green Goblin is pretty much all but confirmed at this point, I would definitely like to see him as well. He is a personal favorite of mine, and I just was looking for any form of media to see him in action aside from the books and the comics, just see him like moving on the screen. And I finally got to when I watched the 90s Spider-Man cartoon when he was portrayed by talented actor Mark Hamill. I the first time I saw him was in the Goblin War episode of season 3 because I bought I didn't buy it. I rented it at the Hollywood video store when it was still a thing, and yeah, it was the Return of the Green Goblin, and he showed up like the episode right after because we had the first episode with the Spot. We'll get to him in a bit, but his episode was important enough to set up like the whole arc of the finale of season 3 and a little bit beyond, because that's all there was within the Return of the Green Goblin. So yeah, at this point they already knew each other, and I didn't really know who he was. For a great period of time, from what I know, Hobgoblin was one of Spider-Man's most mysterious foes. Like, no one really knew anything about him. And From what I got from the comic books, the real Hobgoblin brainwashed Ned Leeds, who is Spider-Man's best friend in the MCU movies, from Homecoming to upcoming release in a couple of days, No Way Home. And I think Ned was also a reporter character in the Daily Bugle. He worked there, and so Hobgoblin brainwashes him and makes everyone think he's the Hobgoblin, but he's not. So he goes. So they. So Spider-Man fights him and then finds out it's Ned, but it's really not. The real Hobgoblin's still out there, and it's revealed to be his the very first guy to ever don the costume, Roderick Kingsley. And then at some point later on, Jason Macendale, whom I thought was the initial Hobgoblin, because that's who he was revealed to be in the 90s cartoon when I first watched it. He later donned the costume himself. Hobgoblin's abilities are. They almost exactly match Goblin's, except with the exception of the super strength, until he figures out how to recreate the serum in the comics. If I'm not mistaken, I did watch a video like on YouTube about the whole origin of the Green Goblin, not the Hobgoblin. Sorry, guys. And yeah, everything is a close match to the Green Goblin except his appearance and, like I said before, a few tech pieces he might have. Because I know he was a lot different than Green Goblin in the cartoon I watched. Like, he had a laser pistol, he had a big glider with smart bombs, and a whole bunch of other interesting little gadgets. He didn't really have like the gauntlets, the power gauntlets that Green Goblin had in the cartoon, but nor did he have his strength. But it was still an interesting and fun villain to watch. And I really liked how Mark Hamill. I really like how Mark Hamill portrayed him on the cartoon. So let's go to the next villain that I'd like to see. He's also another personal favorite of mine, and I don't think we've really seen him in any Spider-Man video games or media, to be honest, aside from the cartoons in the movies. And the villain I'm talking about now is Hydro Man. Maury Bench. He was a little hard to understand at first until I watched his debut in the 90s cartoon, which was around the time 10 years ago, I think. So yeah, Maury Bench in the cartoon was an ex-boyfriend of Mary Jane's. He went to school with her, but given the kind of character he was, I believe and what he described, he was kicked out justifiably, and he was enlisted in the Navy afterwards, and he was working on a ship and helping them lift some sort of generator or power equipment, and then he accidentally fell in with it, and the radiation and whatever was in the ocean made him completely out of water, and thus Hydro Man was born. Very interesting portrayal, because he's always trying to get MJ no matter what, and he's not going to let Peter or Spider-Man near her. And yeah, like I said, we haven't really seen him in any actual video games, to be honest. It would be interesting to have him show up here in this upcoming IP. I mean, yeah, aside from the 90s cartoon and his appearance as the water elemental in Far From Home, we haven't really seen a whole lot of him. So it'd be nice for Marvel and Insomniac to give this character a little bit more life and an awesome portrayal like they have done with the other characters in the first Spider-Man so far. And I guess I could also probably wrap maybe Molten Man into the mix. I mean, I don't really know a whole lot about him, but I know he's a giant he was a giant lava monster as the fire elemental in Far From Home. I think his name was, I don't really remember his name. I think it was Mark or something like that. Yeah, his identity, I haven't really done a whole lot of research on Molten Man, but I do know he's a Spider-Man villain, but he's not really all that well known, to be honest. And of course, you can't forget Sandman. He is also pretty underrated and underused in Well, probably not, now that I think about it, because there is a whole lot of Spider-Man media that I haven't really looked at, like the Spectacular Spider-Man and other Spider-Man cartoons on the Disney Channel that I haven't really given much mind. I've only stuck with the 90s cartoon and the live action movies and Spider-Verse, so what can you do? as well as a few video games I've played, like Web of Shadows, the video game adaptations of the first and third movies of the Raimi trilogy, and of course Friend or Foe, and then of course the newest Marvel Spider-Man video game that everyone loves and adores, which is technically the topic of the video in a sense. So yeah, I know Sandman's had his fair share, but it would be nice for them to bring him back here as well, to be honest, regardless of his other appearances. Sorry guys, I keep losing track of my my speech. It's just tired and going on for a bit, so please excuse me if I accidentally mess up in my words. Alright, so we've covered pretty much all the elemental men, because Hydro Man's the biggest focus for me, but I would also like to see Molten Man and Sandman as well, if possible, depending on what the devs do. Really would be nice to bring them into the fray somehow. So, next up on my list, well, yeah, next up would be Aleister Smythe and his Spider Slayers. Genius robotics engineer. His father is Spencer Smythe, who was held under blackmail, or was it in partnership with Wilson Fisk, the Kingpin, and Oscorp. If it's been a while since I've watched 90s cartoon, but I did like go back and watch all the old episodes from it, like back in 2011, 10 years ago, and I accidentally skipped over Scorpions, which was the second one in the first season. The Lizard was the first episode. Night of the Lizard was the very first episode of the 90s cartoon. Then I accidentally skipped over Sting of the Scorpion, which was episode 2, and accidentally went straight to the Spider Slayer episodes featuring the Smythes and what happened. So yeah, Aleister Smythe is a genius robotics engineer like his father. And in the 90s cartoon, he was in partnership with Oscorp, who was also... It was kind of like a weird little triangle they had. Like, Spencer was in tie with both Oscorp and Fisk, and they were both in tie with each other, so yeah. So, what happened was, when Spider-Man defeated the Black Widow Spider Slayer, the building that Spencer and his son were working in caught fire, but he was able to get Aleister out, but he was believed to be dead. He got blown up in the building, but apparently he somehow found a cryo sleep chamber, went to sleep in it, and Wilson Fisk has had him in his possession ever since, hiding him from his son, who believed he was dead, and he also believed that Spider-Man was at fault as well, and was then brought into partnership with the Kingpin as his right-hand man for a little bit, until like season 3, when he believed that Fisk was about to betray him, and he went to Peter Parker to try and get Spider-Man to help him out, but it was too late because Fisk caught on, and then he worked with there was another character who was new. He wasn't in the comics, but he was debuted in the animated series. Like, he was like this Two-Face kind of character, half human, half mutant, but he was like some sort of scientist who was working on a way to destroy the mutants, and he accidentally fell in his own stuff when trying to get his data back from Hobgoblin, and then he turned into a giant Godzilla-like monster, and then Spider-Man worked with the X-Men to change him back, mostly. His name eludes me right now, but I'll look back at it, and I'll try and look back at it. But if you guys watch the 90s cartoon, you know exactly who I'm talking about. So yeah, he replaced Smythe, and they turned Aleister into the Ultimate Spider Slayer, and then he broke free from Fisk's control after Spider-Man revealed the truth about his father to him, and now he's just working on a way to try and get his father out of cryo sleep. But in the end, he decides he's done being evil, and he just wants to go back and help his father, like in the Secret Wars arc. But yeah, he was also in the Amazing Spider-Man video game, and he created a whole bunch of super cool robots to fight Spider-Man, and Some of them were actually some of the coolest boss fights I ever had in a video game when I played it, like the giant snake one or the giant crab one in the park. And then, of course, there was a big scorpion one, though, given its size, we couldn't really take it on, sadly. But I think it was like the biggest slayer out of all of them. But you had to like fight. You had to team up with the lizard to fight Smythe in his mech suit on top of the scorpion. But yeah, Smythe has come up with a lot of cool robotic foes for Spider-Man to face, and if he was brought into the new Spider-Man game, I would definitely love to see them brought to life. I'd like to see what creativity would be put into them. I'd like to see what would come out of them. Yeah. So let's move on. Given the fact that Venom's confirmed at this point, I would love to see the symbiotes as well. I would love to see the other symbiotes, like Carnage and the others, but it's probably a little too early for them, to be honest. But it would be interesting to see like it develop later on to where it stretches out from beyond Venom, and then he goes to fight Carnage, and then we get the Life Foundation symbiotes such as Phage, Riot, Lasher, Scream, and Agony. I would definitely love to see them finally brought to life on the screen, because, I mean, we already got Riot in the first Venom movie, and now Carnage is finally here in his own big movie, which released back in October at the start. And I know we're getting Toxin in the third movie, because we saw the little scene with Pat Mulligan somehow possessed by a symbiote when his cop buddies were coming to rescue him. It would really be interesting to see Spider-Man take them on as well in an actual video game or some point in the big screen. But if they were to like appear in this video game, it would really make my day. I'd just love to see him throwing hands with Scream or Agony or Lasher or Phage or even Riot, and the other symbiotes as well, like Hybrid and Toxin. Even though it seems a bit of a stretch, and it seems rather early for that to happen. So let's move on. I guess from what I've seen from the previous video game, they have a very good habit of bringing to life lesser villains and giving them some proper fleshing out. Like Mr. Negative, I didn't really know anything about him until he debuted, as well as Screwball. And if they were to pull this kind of move again in the next IP, I would definitely love to see the Spot, because he's an interesting fellow, and he's had a special place in my heart ever since I saw him in the '90s cartoon. I know he's not the biggest Spider-Man villain, and a lot of people don't really look at him all that much, but it would really be interesting to see him brought to life as well, because he has all these super cool dimensional powers. Like, he has all these little black spots which happen to be portals that he can use to his advantage, and it would be interesting to have a foe like that in the next game. Though I'm not really sure how much they're going to push it for this one, to be honest, because I know we're getting Lizard and Green Goblin are all but confirmed at this point, but Venom's definitely going to be there, and from given the voice and the narration in the trailer for the video game, we're definitely going to be seeing Kraven as well. And with Kraven, there's a good chance we might also see Calypso as well. I didn't really know all that much about her. I thought she was somehow based off of the Pirates of the Caribbean character, which was the first of anything I ever heard about the character. She's like this voodoo witch and also Kraven's wife or girlfriend. And she was in the Spider-Man 3 video game, the PS3 and Xbox 360 version of the Spider-Man 3 video game. She was there with him hunting the lizard, and then she turns the lizard into a mega lizard or ultra lizard, depending on which version you're playing. And then I finally got to see her in the '90s cartoon. She started off as Maria Crawford, who was a scientist researching like this genetic serum or whatever, and then she was working with Sergei Kravinoff, who was her guide, and then she meets, I guess, her co-worker or whatever, her colleague, who used a serum on himself and discovered its effects and gave it to her. But then when protecting her from lions, Sergei got injured, and then she used the serum on him to save him, and that's how he became Kraven. And then Spider-Man uses the cure on him to save him from himself, from being the evil hunter who relies only on his instincts to hunt and kill. And then later on, he teams up with Punisher to save Spider-Man from being a man-spider, because apparently the spider that bit him also caused mutations to turn him make him more than Spider-Man, which was a mutant man-spider. And they save him, and then Kraven mentions her as Calypso, because Spider-Man turned to her for a cure for his man-spider mutation. And then give me a second, guys. Okay, guys, sorry about that. I needed a bit of a breather because talking for so long was really giving my face a proper workout. So, where was I exactly? Well, I'm sure it'll come back. So, yeah, we've covered Hydro Man, we've covered Hobgoblin, we've covered Aleister Smythe, and we were in the process of talking about the symbiotes as well, if I'm not mistaken. And then we were also talking about the Spot as well. So let's see, who else is next? Give me a second to think, guys. I remember now. Can't really overlook with this one, to be honest. So, yeah, with Kraven being introduced as well, there's also a chance to see Chameleon, the Master of Disguises. According to what I've read about him, he's Kraven's half-brother, but in the 90s animated show, he was the adopted son of the Red Skull, Captain America's #1 villain, and was also stepbrother to his biological son as well. He was a spy, and he was working with them to produce the ultimate weapon to turn the Red Skull's son, his biological son, into Electro, the ultimate weapon. And Spider-Man in that episode or arc teamed up with Captain America and the 5 other superheroes. One of them was the Wizard, the other one was, I don't remember all their names, but they were like 5 very old superheroes whom I knew very little about. One was called the Wizard, one was called, like I said, I can't really remember all their names, but one of them could fly. Well, 2 of them could match Captain America's power, and of course there was the Wizard who had super speed, and then there was the screaming guy who I forgot as well. But Chameleon is a very interesting foe. He's Kingpin's go-to agent when he needs a job done. He appeared several times in the animated series. He's known to wear masks, but in the animated series he had a holographic disguise belt. He just takes pictures of people and he could disguise himself as them. So, I'm not entirely sure how an encounter with him would work out, because he's like a master of disguise and he doesn't really have any actual powers aside from his elusive and yet extremely high quality disguises. It'd probably have to be like a chase or something like that. But regardless, I would like to see him. We already have Kingpin in the Insomniac Marvel Spider-Man, and I think it would be really neat to have him show up as well. And like I said, with Kraven being introduced and Kingpin already being in there, it is highly likely that we could see him. Oh, yeah, that's right. I was in the process of talking about Calypso, Kraven's wife or / girlfriend or whatever. So yeah, I was in the process. Yeah, I was talking about her in the Punisher arc when Punisher came to town, when he believed Spider-Man to be a criminal because he was chasing Morbius, who is also another villain we should get to. He thought that Spider-Man was responsible for all these mysterious happenings, which Morbius was responsible for. People blame Spider-Man, including Felicia Hardy, who was Peter's girlfriend at some points in the show, but it never worked out because she always thought he was walking out on her, but in reality he just was jostling, being Spider-Man as well as his normal life as well. He just couldn't ever really sit down with a date for her. And then Michael Morbius, who was one of their classmates at the time, ended up with her because he saved her from a mugger. And then there was like a competition, and Morbius discovered something genetics wise from Peter's blood, and it would have won. He would have won because of that. Peter would have won the competition, but Morbius stole it to experiment on his own and see if he could reverse engineer it for his project, because he was trying to win the project so he could go back home and cure this disease which has been ravaging his native land or whatever. But then one of his bat specimens gets involved with the ray and the blood, and it attacks him, and then it bites him, and then he turns into Morbius, the vampire, the living vampire. So, yeah. Punisher comes to town because he thinks Spider-Man is responsible for everything that's Morbius is responsible for, and that's also at the point where Spider-Man fully mutates into a man-spider, and then Kraven and he team up to try and stop him and save him and cure him. And of course, Maria Crawford, who is still Maria Crawford at the time, is able to come up with an antidote to properly reverse the mutation, but sadly it doesn't reverse it entirely because Spider-Man still has the disease going on, and he doesn't get cured by it till the end of the season when he faces Vulture. And then Kraven returns as Kraven in season 4 when Spider-Man and Black Cat are doing stuff together for a few episodes throughout that whole season. It was a little weird until Mary Jane came back. And then, yeah, so Kraven's Kraven again, and he's doing some what appears to be bad stuff. He's oh crap, okay guys, sorry about that. My stepdad called to discuss Christmas stuff. So, yeah, I was about done with what I was discussing about Calypso, so where she becomes Calypso in the Return of the Kraven the Hunter episode in the 90s animated series of Spider-Man. So, yeah, it seems like Kraven's committing crimes, but actually he's trying to search for a way to cure her, because after all the business with the Man-Spider and mutation nightmares that he was going through in season 2, she comes back in season 4 because, well, she went to Africa to research a disease, but she caught it herself, so Kraven gave her the serum to save her, and she turned into a monstrous version of herself. And then Spider-Man and Black Cat work with him to save her after they catch her, and they're able to cure her mostly. But she comes back a bit different, and that's how she becomes Calypso. So, yeah, we got a fair amount of what I wanted to talk about covered, and then of course, we can't forget Mysterio. He's another villain that I need to bring up, definitely, as well. Especially within his recent appearances, especially in Far From Home, because he was the main villain. And we finally got to see Mysterio in live action on the big screen, which was a nice surprise. And they really portrayed him quite well, to be honest. So when it came to, Spider-Man and the whole plot with him, it was a good movie. But when you throw in all the other goofy bits of Far From Home with Spider-Man and his classmates and him trying to figure out stuff with MJ, it kind of falls short, to be honest. But yeah, we can't forget Mysterio. He's been in a lot of Spider-Man media, especially the 90s cartoon. He's also been in the Spider-Man 2 video game of the Raimi trilogy. He's also been the main villains of Friend or Foe and Shattered Dimensions. Yeah, we really can't forget Mysterio and his elusive illusions. Well, not in the same manner as Chameleon. Mysterio's on a much grander scale, creating illusions and stuff. We already know his story. Quentin Beck wants to be a superhero, so he comes up with Mysterio and uses his special effects to frame Spider-Man and try to put himself on top in the 90s cartoon. But he also was a movie director, and the main actress he was shooting, I think they had a thing going on, but there was an accident on the bridge because the explosions went too far and Spider-Man swooped in to save the day. But when he went to check on her, she was gone. And then they decided to redo the movie with Mary Jane in it, and that's when she starts seeing visions of her father in the 90s cartoon, and then she gets lured down into a secret area, and she meets the actress, Miranda Wilson, I believe her name was. Apparently she's been alive this whole time, but she's been degrading, and she's come up with a machine to try and put her consciousness into Mary Jane's body so she has a second chance. And apparently, she's been working. Actually, yeah. Quentin actually found her and saved her mostly, and he designed the machine for her. But actually, it was never designed to work because he just didn't want her to give up hope on living. It was just a trick of his. And then the two of them perish together. And we know what happens to Mysterio in Far From Home. He gets shot by a stray bullet from one of his little weaponized drones when he's trying to kill Spider-Man when he's smashing them. It's a perfect way to defeat a villain indirectly. That was probably one of my favorite bits of the whole film. One of the bits I believe that was well done. And then, but yeah, we really can't forget Mysterio, especially since he had a little bit of a reference in the first video game of Insomniac's Spider-Man. So, yeah, I think that's all the big ones covered. Chameleon, Mysterio, Hydro Man, Hobgoblin, Aleister Smythe. I think those are at least the big five, along with the lesser ones I've mentioned, with Calypso, Sandman, Molten Man. Well, they're not lesser, I mean, not all of them are lesser. But there are probably a couple other lesser entries I'd like to see as well. Like the mutant villains from the Amazing Spider-Man video game that I played when it came out along with the movie in 2012, like Vermin and Iguana, and the Piranha one, Natty, if I'm not mistaken, was his name. He was like the penultimate boss in that game, the human piranha hybrid. But aside from them, being half human, half monster, cross species, bred in a petri dish, I really don't know much about their initial origins. Like, I know they were human at some point, if I'm not mistaken, but I would definitely like to see them as well. And with Lizard being in there, especially with the Lizard being referenced in Insomniac's first game of Spider-Man, then Kurt Connors getting a cameo and getting an appearance in the Miles Morales secret ending. I can definitely say Lizard is all but confirmed at this point. And if he appears, it would also be nice to see if the other mutations he's come up with appear as well, like Iguana. And I know Vermin isn't necessarily one of them, but it would be nice to see him as well. Especially since he had he really stood out in the Amazing Spider-Man video game. He was the rat cross-species you had to chase down in hopes for a cure for the cross-species disease, which was ravaging New York, either killing or mutating people. Yeah, like a lot of the major villains that Spider-Man knows, like Scorpion, Rhino, they were all like these human-animal hybrids rather than what they were initially. But it would be nice to see their initial origins come to life and the characters themselves be given the proper light and respect that they deserve, because they are such interesting villains, to be honest. And regarding mutants, I know I mentioned Carnage and all the others before. I would also like to see Shriek as well. She was, Frances Barrison, and she was Carnage's wife, and she appeared in the Let There Be Carnage movie, and the actress who portrayed her, Naomi Harris is her name. That's right. And she was also Tia Dalma in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies as well. And she also appeared in 007 Skyfall, which I watched with my parents because somehow my stepdad got the insane idea that Venom Let There Be Carnage was also going to be released on Amazon Prime, so we're going to try and have a movie night and watch it then, but it wasn't there, so yeah, we ended up watching something else, and we ended up watching 007 Skyfall, and Naomi Harris was also in it as well. I believe her character's name was Eve. So yeah, as we all know, Frances Barrison is a mutant who has the ability to use supersonic screams to deafen her foes, and they definitely did a good job portraying her for what she was in the film. And I know I could be mistaken, but in the Spider-Man 3 video game, she was Michael Morbius' wife, and she had the same abilities, but she also had a little bit more, and was also, she also had some sort of symbiotic thing going on, that little arc in the PS2 version, which I owned first initially before the PS3 version. I didn't realize that there were different version exclusives and that the games were so different from one another. So, yeah, in that game she was Michael Morbius's wife, and I guess somehow she got corrupted by the meteorites and symbiotes or whatever. I don't entirely know all that much, but I know now that she was, if I'm not mistaken, Carnage's wife slash girlfriend initially. And according to Andy Serkis, the director of Venom 2 Let There Be Carnage, who was also Gollum, and he was also in Peter Jackson's King Kong. He had quite a few roles, but he's also known as Ulysses Claw in Black Panther. Apparently, actor turned director. He confirmed that she was still alive after the fight, even though the bell fell on her. But regardless, she is such an interesting character, and given the fact that she is somewhat involved with symbiotes, and the fact that she's a mutant, and we're also getting a Wolverine video game, there's a chance she could appear. It's not very big, but I would definitely love to see her appear, because her character does indeed intrigue me. So, let's see. I think that's all the lesser villains they got, with the exception of Jack-o'-lantern, who was like a ripoff of the Goblins in a sense. And he was initially portrayed by Jason McIndale, whom I discussed as being one of the Hobgoblins at first. I think he started out as Jack-o'-lantern and then became Hobgoblin. So like I said, guys, my mind is just tired. It takes a bit to keep going at this stage. So, yeah, either he became Hobgoblin at first and then became his own rip-off version called Jack-o'-lantern, or it was the other way around. I don't remember. But, yeah, I think I've covered all the lesser villains now. I still gotta talk about Morbius now that I think about it, because I have talked about him quite a bit in this video. So, yeah, Morbius the Living Vampire is also a Spider-Man villain. We already discussed him quite a bit, but he is also definitely one I would like to see. I'm not sure how they'd pull it off, or when they'd pull it off, or if they'd pull it off, but he is definitely a villain I'd like to see. They haven't really given him all that much coverage. I mean, the only bits of media we've seen from him, aside from the comics, are the 90s cartoon, the Spider-Man 3 video game, PS2 version, and of course his own upcoming film, where he will be portrayed by Jared Leto, who was Joker in Suicide Squad 1, which came out 5 years ago. So yeah, guys, I think that's about it for all the Spider-Man villains and stuff. I really can't wait to see more from the game when we get closer to 2023. I'm sure we'll see more from it at some point in 2022 next year, but I think this is it for now, guys. We've already, like I said, we've already have Venom officially confirmed, and I really can't wait to see what they do with him. And of course, there's also the fact that Peter and Miles are together doing stuff, so who knows what they'll do, how they'll, handle both of them at the same time, because it definitely looks like we're going to be, having fun with both of them, and I really can't wait to do so. And of course, like I said, villains like Lizard, Green Goblin, and Kraven are all but confirmed at this point. I mean, given the dialogue, it's definitely confirmed that Kraven's in it, and we know that Norman's had a big, major role in the first game, and we've been seeing more Goblin stuff from him towards the later bits, like the chapter where MJ has to sneak through Oscorp, and then she finds, the secret area that Norman has with all the genetic stuff and the tech stuff, and of course there was some Goblin-related tech in there as well, such as pumpkin bombs and schematics for glider, if I'm not mistaken, or body armor. And then we see him in the secret ending with Harry, who is in a back-the-tank tube or whatever. And I believe there is he is being sustained by what I believe to be a symbiote, what we believe to be a symbiote, because I'm not the only one. Apparently everyone believes it to be a symbiote. It has to be a symbiote because Venom is now confirmed, and There's a chance that Harry might actually be portraying Venom at some point. We don't know if Eddie Brock will be involved. I don't know, but we definitely know Venom's in it, and we definitely know that our initial thoughts from what we saw in the secret ending of the first game are now confirmed with Venom. And of course, Norman has made an appearance since the first game when Miles Morales with the secret ending. Like, Harry's about to get out, and I think we're gonna have some interesting plot stuff with him when he does. I think we're definitely gonna have to have some sort of conflict or an encounter with him, given his current state in the first game. But like I said, at this point, Green Goblin is all but confirmed just because of those things. We have yet to see him in action. We have yet to see any sighting of him, but and like I said, Lizard, it's the same deal with Lizard, because Kurt Connors appeared in the secret ending of Miles Morales as well, and then we got a guy dressed up in a Lizard Halloween costume at that one chapter in the first game. So yeah, guys, we are going to have an interesting Spider-Man 2 video game when it comes out, and I really can't wait to see who comes out of it and what comes out of it, regardless. But those are my initial thoughts of what I'd like to see. That's my Christmas wish list for the game, but I'm not entirely sure how accurate it's going to be. I'm not sure if the developers will listen to what people would like to see. I mean, of course, they're doing their own thing. I mean, it's going to be like a whole... It's been like technically 3 years with Miles Morales, but without it, it's 5. But they've been working on it for some time, and I can't... I'm sure everyone's just itching for more, and there's just a whole lot of speculation on who and what we're going to see. So yeah, we can't wait to see what comes out of it when it fully releases, and I do hope some of what I've talked about is in the game. If not, then I'm pretty sure I will love it regardless from what I saw from the initial trailer. Let's hope that's the case. And with that said, now the way that the subscriber special has finally come to an end. I hope you guys all enjoyed. I know I've been talking for quite a bit. It's been quite a journey, and I think it's now is a good time as any to get this out for you guys, especially with the release of Spider-Man No Way Home. So once again, with that said, now the way, I hope you all enjoyed, and I shall see you in the next one.